Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome back to another Modernize or Die CFML News Edition. We're streaming live on YouTube and coming to your earbuds via podcast players everywhere. So I'm Gavin Pickett, a software consultant for Ortus Solutions, and my other guest host today is
Brad Wood. I was thinking, what if we started the podcast one day and like the camera comes on and you're like eating a bowl of cereal and I'm like shaving and we're like, oh, we're live. I mean, don't tell anybody we're going to do it. I just think it'd go across real well.
Yeah, so we probably shouldn't have said that. Oh well, next idea.
We gave it away. The secrets.
Yep, so June 30th.
Who's our sponsor, Gavin?
Well, one of our sponsors is our employer, Ortus Solutions. So thank you to them. They're funding this podcast, making it possible. And so the best thing about Ortus Solutions is we offer a lot of great open source products. But we do make some money by offering live trainings. And this month, well, actually, I guess next month, July, we have 2 live workshops that are available. You can sign up now. One of them is going to be ColdBox Zero to Hero, led by myself. And then 2 weeks later, Luis Mahano, the box creator himself, will be teaching a ColdBox Hero to Superhero API edition. So those 2 trainings are available. You can sign up on the Ortus Solutions site, and we'll give you more information about them coming up here. Now, the other way to get great content from us is CFCast.com, which now has our subscriptions available. So we've got lots of great content there. And basically, it'll be a great way to get all of our content. We've got our webinars on there, our conferences on there, and other content as we send out. So hopefully you guys can check out CFCast.
CFCast is pretty exciting. I know that Eric had that idea like 1,000 years ago based on the Lorecast stuff, and he kind of like had it put together, just kind of sitting around, and we never launched it. And so our Into the Box videos was a perfect opportunity to kind of get that CFCast launched. And the subscription support is a big feature. I know they've been working like crazy on that, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yep, exactly. And the subscriptions are now live, and we got a lot of great content. And let us know if you have anything else. Okay, well, excuse me 1 second. I think we have a fan problem, so I'm going to quickly try and take care of that. So, Brad, you want to tell us a little bit about Patreon support?
I can. Yeah, it just sounds like the fan's hitting your microphone. So our Patreon support is at the 48% mark for fully funding all of our Modernize or Die podcasts. Gavin's gone. Via our Patreon site. So if you are not a Patreon, get the link here. You can go over to patreon.com/Ortus Solutions, and you can help support our podcast every month, which means that we'll say your lovely name at the end of the podcast, and you guys can help make this show a success. So 48%. Let's keep moving that bar. Gavin's back.
Yep, sorry about that. Did some work on my office, and I moved my desk, and of course it's right under the ceiling fan now, so perfect position for lots of static, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's cleared up now.
Cool, well, let's get into some news and events. So
let's do it.
So there was a tweet this last week by Mingo Hagen about CFML Slack, which is now 5 years old. Can you believe that? That's older than some languages.
Yeah, entire programming languages have been created since we've had our CFML Slack. Yeah. It's crazy, 3,500 plus members, which I mean is still probably a drop in the bucket of the total number of ColdFusion developers, but out of people that are participating in the community. I remember when we were like, 500 people, and they were like, can we get to 1,000? Whoa, what if we made it to 1,000 people? And then we made it to 1,000, and then it was like, will we ever hit 2,000? And then we hit 2,000, and by the time we hit 3,000, it was like, oh look, that was 3,000. So it's really been amazing to watch the CFML Slack team grow over the years. A lot bigger than I think anybody ever thought it would. It sort of grew out of an old like IRC channel, I believe, that had like 50 people, and so it's grown quite a bit past that, which is pretty
Yes,
cool.
definitely reaching a lot more people now, and we have one channel in there. Try not to overdo it with every ColdFusion or ColdBox product. So if you want to get more information, we actually have our own box team Slack channel as well, and I'm posting the links there. So with Slack, you have to be invited, but we set up these Heroku apps so you can just go online and basically invite yourself. So the links are in the show notes. So you can join the CFML Slack and also the box team one if you'd like. And that way you have a channel for each of our products, and we have lots of products and lots of channels.
Exactly. So the box team one is actually run by Ortus, and we have kind of broken out channels for almost every single box product. So if you have some real specific questions you want to dig into, like Quick or Command Box or stuff like that, we're all in the box team Slack one as well. So
Yeah, and
choose your poison.
the CFML Slack is good, but if there's 5 different streams going on at the same time, it can get kind of confusing. Or if you log out for a day, come back, your conversation's gone because there's a lot of traffic in there. So
Yeah,
it's nice to have a smaller one.
these are both free Slack teams, but you get a lot more history worth on the box team because there's not as much chatting going on there.
Yep, exactly. So 5 years old, going strong, and I think the box team one. I think I created the box team one a few months after the CFML Slack one because it started to get overloaded pretty quickly. So we're like,
Yeah,
let's
it's
make
been
our own.
around for about the same amount of time,
Yeah,
I would say.
it's probably coming up on 5 years, probably in a couple of months. So cool. Next little news, we already mentioned it briefly, but CFCast, the subscriptions are now live, and I think we already had our first couple of people signing up for subscriptions. I know that Tony Junkers said he signed up. So another cool thing about that is we're making the content for that. So that's part of the job that we're doing is we're trying to get content set up for it. Obviously, we're wanting to add more and more. So if you guys got any content or features that you need, let us know. Because we're trying to decide what's most important. You know, a lot of things get asked about workshops, and so we're trying to do content related to that. We obviously produce webinars. We're trying to do one a month, and so we've got all those webinars on there too. But you know, if there's something you need, let us know, and we'll try and get that out there. So,
do we have a Google form or something people can fill out if they have ideas for content, or maybe something on the site to submit that?
I was actually going to talk to them about setting that up. I think there's a contact form on there. I'm not sure. Eric says yes. So there should be some
Actually,
way.
I think he was referring to Scott Steinbeck's question.
Oh,
But it looks like there's also cfcast.com/support.
So, yeah, if not, let us know on Twitter. There is a new Twitter account for the CFCasts website as well, so you can get to that from cfcast.com. So
There we go.
No, let us
Yeah,
know.
that support URL has a nice little form. Have a question or something to report. So if you have ideas, here we go. So it looks like we can probably add a category in there, maybe. Eric, there's a little drop down of support reasons. We should add a category called content suggestion or something. Sweet. All right, I'm excited to see what the future of CFCast has.
Cool. And I guess our announcement of the box team Slack just worked because someone just signed up. So, welcome.
That was quick.
Very
Look
quick.
and see who it was.
And mentioning CFCasts, the webinar I did last week, which was Modernize, Functional, and Fluent CFML REST APIs, is already on the CFCast website, so you can watch that there. So we recorded it last Friday on June 26th, but definitely go check that out. That's already available. So, and a lot of the content we're providing, like the webinars and stuff like that, are all free, but the subscription's available for some of the paid content. And if you went into the box, you would have got a code to sign up. Then you get all the Into the Box videos for free as well. If not, you can look at getting a subscription or purchasing a package. So definitely check that out. And then all of Brad's screencasts on Command Box 5 are all up there as well. And we'll try and backport some of the existing content so you have one place to find it all. But we'll also be looking at adding new content. So let us know. And Scott's asking for a video search. Yes, if you have a feature you'd like to, please submit that in the support form as well. I know they've got a big list of things that they're working on right now. We're making lots of progress there, so it'll get better and better. But if you got something you think you want to see there, definitely add it to the support queue, and then we'll get it taken care of. We're working hard to make this a great tool for all of our content.
Sweet.
Okay.
So we have an Ortus webinar coming up?
We're still waiting to be announced on that one. So in July's
Okay.
webinar, we don't have that set up just yet. But we do have some ColdFusion meetups that Charlie's been working hard on, and he's had
All right.
3 or 4 in the last few weeks, and he's got 2 more scheduled already. So the next one's going to be with Dan Wilson.
Nice.
So blast from the past there a little bit, but he's going to be doing one saying your best options to build modern front ends with JavaScript. And so he'll talk about, the dominant choices like React, Angular, and Vue.js, and figuring out what to go over. But he's also been working with a couple of other projects too. He was actually was it React Native? I think he was working for them.
That sounds about right. I know that he was definitely doing a lot of that.
Yep. So he was working on that. So it'd be kind of interesting to see his perspective on that. And so that's going to be July 9th. So it looks like July 9th for Dan Wilson, and then on July 16th they've already got the next one. TJ VanToll is going to be doing how native mobile development changed the way I write web apps. And so he's been talking about iOS and Android and how it changed the way you built web apps and stuff. And so he said it was basically after an explorer returning from a multi-year safari, he's got so much to share. So that sounds like an interesting talk as well. So, and then
so I know Dan Wilson, but I don't think I know TJ VanToll.
I thought that name sounded familiar.
It's like
from
he wrote
CF
a book,
Camp.
jQuery UI in Action. If this is the same guy.
Interesting. So Charlie's in the chat, so he's giving us some extra information here.
Yeah. Okay. Web developer, tech author, principal developer advocate at Progress SW. Works on Kendo UI, previously on NativeScript. And he's a Pokemon Go enthusiast. There you go.
Okay. And so Charlie said that Daniel was working in other environments. NativeScript was who he's working for. So not React Native, NativeScript, which they had several versions with very similar names, so I apologize for messing that one up. But yeah, so it looks like 2 good sessions. And then last week, Charlie had his session, keeping CF and Java updated, challenges and solutions. So that one's already available on YouTube. So there's actually a playlist with, I think he said 260 videos. So now it should be 261 with last week's session. So a lot of great content over many years up on that on YouTube.
My solution for keeping ColdFusion and Java updated is just use command box.
Because every time you install, it's updated.
You can just tell it to use the latest version, and it'll just download it whenever it comes out. Yep. That's a short webinar.
Very cool. And so
awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I like seeing the speakers that Charlie's pulling in, even if they're not ColdFusion guys or currently hardcore ColdFusion guys. There's still some respected people with a lot of experience out there in the field, so that should create some good content. And it's also just good to see the ColdFusion Meetup active again.
Yep, and there's a ColdFusion Meetup survey that we're going to get in the show notes as well. So Charlie's wanting to know more about what you want to see, what you like, what you don't like, times, etc. So he's got a little survey out there, and he'll probably post it in the chat here in a minute for us. And then that will allow you guys to have some feedback on what you want to see happen with it. And so I know Charlie wants to get this going again. It's a great tool, and the biggest problem he had in the past was just getting speakers. So if you're thinking about speaking at conferences, this is a great way to get your feet wet. And then those conference speakers, maybe you can spin out some of your old ones or test out some ideas for some new ones. I think it's a great thing to have, and every week or 2 it'll be great, just to get it out there and keep that fresh content flying. So definitely think it's good. And so in case you missed Charlie's was talking about the JVM as well as just CF as well, and talking about how command box was stuck on Java 8 for a while, and the web connector, which usually breaks everything. So but yeah, so it's basically out there, and most people should definitely check out that. Charlie got a lot of great experience with troubleshooting, so he knows all the tricks of the trade. I bet you'll learn a lot from that. Okay, so that's ColdFusion Meetup. So we'll get that out there as well. But we also have another couple of webinars coming up as well, this time from Adobe. So we have one on the API Manager and Architecture, understanding the what, when, and how of API Manager architecture and its various components, with Kailash Bahani, and that's going to be July 23rd. And then July 30th, we have an Adobe webinar, which is a bird's eye view of PMT architecture and how to harness its true potential with Nimit Sharma. So it looks like pretty much every week in July there's something going on webinar-wise already. So yeah, so this is a good couple of items here. They're available on the Adobe Events website, and we'll post the links in the show notes for you there. So that pretty much wraps up the news. The state of the survey, the state of the CF Union survey is still out there. Again, we're waiting on that final date, so if you haven't done it, please do. And it started at the start of January, so it should be about time to wrap this thing up, I think, Brad. Almost 6 months. Probably enough time for someone to fill out the survey.
Probably, yeah. I'll have to ask and see if they have an actual end date set for that. But I think that most people that are going to respond have probably responded, but there's a good number of respondents. I think it's over 500 at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
The partial results tells you at the bottom of the page, I believe. Okay. Oh, wait, no, I clicked the link to the survey itself.
Yep. So in the chat, I see you and Charlie and Scott were talking about how CommandBox allows you to choose whatever JVM you want, and on the startup, it'll actually load it for you. So if you choose Java version equals OpenJDK 11 when you start up, it'll actually start up with that JVM.
Yeah. Yeah, you can actually even choose JDK versus JRE. You can choose 32-bit versus 64-bit. You can choose the operating system, Windows, Mac, Linux, as well as the major minor patch versions of Java. And as long as it's on the Adopt OpenJDK API, which Eclipse recently acquired, we should probably mention that if it's not in your news.
Talk about it right now, and I'll add it to the news show list.
Yeah, so the integration that CommandBox has that allows it to be able to automatically download and install JREs for your servers to use is all based on the Adopt OpenJDK API that they have, which they were the only OpenJDK provider with an API, at least originally. And it's been interesting to see how the whole OpenJDK community sort of morphed over time. There's newer providers like Liberica that I'd never even heard of before, last year. But anyway, it's interesting. The main people behind Adopt OpenJDK, like Martin, I don't know how you say his name, to be honest, they work for Microsoft now. So the actual employees kind of got gobbled up by Microsoft to help them out with their efforts. And I think their obvious knowledge of OpenJDK helped that. But the Adopt OpenJDK project themselves have recently been acquired by Eclipse, which is super interesting. It kind of makes sense, I guess. So Eclipse is sort of acquiring Adopt OpenJDK, and they're going to be rebranding it into Eclipse. What was it? Adoptium, I think was the name they were going to go with. It's like Eclipse Adoptium or something. Anyway, so I think they're still going to do all the same things, produce all the builds, and host them, but they're just going to be kind of financially supported and run by the Eclipse Software Foundation. So anyway, CommandBox, as far as I know, that won't affect how CommandBox interfaces with it and automatically downloads and installs JREs, but it's just interesting to see the OpenJDK community sort of kind of morphing a bit and consolidating, and the bigger guys gobbling up some of the smaller ones, but hopefully it's all for the good. Cool. The number of respondents, by the way, on the State of the CF Union is 484. So I was incorrect. It's not over 500. I think in some years we may have eclipsed 500, but
well, maybe that's what we're waiting for. So 16
maybe we're waiting
more people
for
need to get out there and do it.
16 of you.
And then you'll have to. And you can hear us. We'll stop hearing us talk about this over and over and over again. So. Anyway, so that's our news so far. I don't think we've missed anything else except for...
One final note, sorry, real quick on OpenJDK. Charlie Arehart wanted to point out that while a lot of people that I know run Adobe ColdFusion on OpenJDK, which is based on the same code base as the Oracle JDK, Adobe only officially supports the Oracle JDK. So I don't know if that means if you go to Adobe for support and you say, hey, I'm using Amazon Corretto, Adobe says, good luck, we're not going to support you. I don't know what that would look like, but for what it's worth, Adobe's official support is for the Oracle JDK, not any of the OpenJDK variants. So,
good to know.
Yeah, technicality, but you don't want it to bite you. If you have a support plan with Adobe, that may matter to them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, one other piece of news is about conference stuff, but I'll leave that till a minute or two into it, so you guys have to wait and see. Okay, so conferences. The Into the Box workshops, as we said, are coming up soon, and we have 2 in July that we've announced. So I am leading the ColdBox Zero to Hero training on July 9 and 10, Luis is leading the ColdBox Zero to Superhero API Edition, and that is July 23 and 24. This is the one that was actually scheduled for in June, but Luis had some things he had to take care of. He was unable to do it, so we had to postpone it. So if you got your tickets for that, it should still be good. Let us know if those dates do not work for you, but everybody else, you can go sign up for that. That is now available. And so basically the way it works is we'll do 2 6-hour days. They'll be broken up to 3-hour blocks and with a lunch break in between. There'll be 9 to 12 Central and then 1 to 4 Central. So we had someone in Australia, so if those times don't work for you guys, think about him. He had to get up at midnight to start the training and didn't finish till 7 a.m. So if he can make it work, I think you guys can make it work. So, but the tickets are available online at ortussolutions.com/events, and we just released a blog post with the new dates today, so on ortussolutions.com. So if you want to go check that out. The price is $8.99, and I believe if you use the podcast 10 code, you can get 10% off. And if you're an ITB attendee, you should have a code that'll get you 15% off. If you don't have that, you can email our support, and we'll get that for you. So, but the big news is we found out a little bit more about Adobe Summit West. So, no official announcement, no blog post, no nothing. But my super sleuth skills tells me that it's online. So if you go to cfsummit.adobeevents.com, you'll see that they have now made it an online conference. And so I'm gonna
the online conference. Let's meet online.
Yep. So I'm going to share my screen here.
That's probably as close to an official announcement as you could have at this point.
Yep. So Adobe ColdFusion Summit. Let's meet online. The online conference here. But if you come down, I think there's some FAQs here. It sounds like it's going to be free. So the keynote and the breakout sessions will be for free. That's what it says here. Again, this may be copied and pasted from the ColdFusion Developer Week or something. I'm not sure because that was free. Usually the CF Summit East is free and West has got a charge, but we'll find out. So right now, the speakers and sponsors are last year's information.
So the dates have been removed from the site. I don't see any dates. I wonder if they're going to stick with the original dates.
Well, my information says it's actually going to be in November now. So if you go to the, well, I guess I'll show you. If you go to the coldfusion.adobe.com portal, that's why I said I had to do some investigation here to find out. But it has upcoming events, and so I'll show you that here for those who are watching. So if you see upcoming events, you'll see that there's the webinar on July 23rd, July 30th, and here we have the Adobe ColdFusion Summit 2020. It's a conference in November, and it's going to be online. Pacific, I assume, for time zones.
So there's no days or times, just November.
So we'll find out more about it, and then we'll figure out, hopefully from Adobe, we'll reach out to them and see if they have an official announcement. I'm sure there'll be something soon, but there's no official announcement lately. There's nothing on their tweets or ColdFusion Facebook account about it. So right now,
I'm curious if they're going to do a call for speakers or what.
But the other news is Adobe Certified Professional ColdFusion is now available online, and so you can actually register for the certification online. So if you guys are looking at doing that, since they're not able to do it in as a pre or post workshop like they usually do, you can come here, register, find out more information about it all here. And so this is going to be in the show notes as well. So a little bit of interesting news there for the Adobe ColdFusion Summit. CF Camp, we still have no news. We're not sure what they're going to be doing there. And of course, we'll keep you up to date as we find out more about all the conferences. There are a lot of online conferences, hard to keep up with. If you guys know of any that we should spotlight here, please let us know. But yeah, so that's pretty exciting. So I guess no travel for us, which is probably expected with the COVID numbers. I guess there's like 32,000 new cases yesterday. So
yeah, I'm gonna say with the uptick in cases again, I'm sure anybody that was sort of teetering on the edge of trying to decide about a late year conference probably is like, no.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. As much as I like to do the traveling.
Yeah. it's fun to see people in person. The online stuff is cool too, but it's nice to catch up with friends in person. Well, my coworkers, because since you and Eric and
Well, yeah, that's
Luis, everyone's all over. This is like how
conferences are the primary way that the Ortus employees even get to see each other because we're all remote. So I'm going to go a whole year and not actually like see anybody in person that I work with. So
yep. Because we usually try and put a retreat or something, some planning sessions around them, and so.
Other than the fact that Gavin and I are clearly sitting at the same desk, other than that.
Yeah. There's still 6 feet, just 6 little feet.
Yeah. We're you can't see it, but we are socially distanced. This is a full 6 feet between us.
Yep, exactly. Just like our big kids. Okay.
All right. So, blogs, tweets, videos of the week.
Yep. So this is the first one is the Ortus announcement here. So this is basically about our workshop. So if you go to the Ortus Solutions site, you can see that here. So you can buy tickets now for the Zero to Hero and the Hero to Superhero. So those two are available online. Find out a little more about it. And then after that, we actually have a blog from Paul Klinkenberg about the horror of is-date in ColdFusion Lucy. And did you get a chance to read this one? Because this was interesting.
Where's the link to it? I'm trying to find it here. Oh, the horror of is-date. I don't think I saw this one.
So he was messing around with some number formatting. And in part of their API...
this just came out today.
Yeah, as part of his number formatting, he had a number that was formatted a certain way. And then when they're outputting stuff in their API, part of their API formatting does an is-date. And so if you had the right number, the right size number, it would think it's a timestamp and therefore date format it. So he had these weird things where is-date was looking at certain things and formatting it. And so it was pretty
it's tricky because it's like there's so many date formats that is-date accepts. Yep. And we'll say, yeah, that's a date. That, you get scenarios like he's found where you have a number that was just meant to be a number, but it also meets the requirements that it could technically represent a date. And that's kind of the downside of a language that uses, strings essentially to represent all sorts of things, or even not even just strings. I mean, behind the scenes in Lucy, for instance, they're usually a Java-Lang double, but...
Oh, the best one I found when I'm formatting an API response, there's a medical company that I work with, and one of their doctors is Dr. No. And so when you output that and you serialize it, his name comes out as Dr. False. Because ColdFusion formatted the no to a false.
It's like, it's a Boolean!
So I have to
it would be interesting to have
name.
like a... Yeah, it'd be interesting to have like a strict version of is-date, or maybe like an is-date where you could like specify like these are the only formats that I want to consider being a date. So some giant, like long number, you're like, no. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a date. But number or something, you're like, okay, yeah, that's a date. I don't know how ColdFusion would implement that.
You would think it would say, can you do a check for is type of date, and would that do it? Because this is essentially he's doing a date pass or a version of it underneath it. So you wonder if you could do a is date check where you don't pass it. It's just saying, is it actually a date that you give it in? But
I don't know.
Because I assume dates are stored as date objects, not date string. Because usually you have to pass a string to convert it. So this one just does the passing automatically. So there should be a way to do a check that doesn't do the passing. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm sure that would be a good solution. But yeah.
I don't know, because I'm also like, contemplating, maybe you shouldn't be asking if things are dates in the first place. Like if you hit an API and you get JSON back, like you should know based on the documentation of the API, which properties are dates and which properties aren't dates. And so, you should be applying that logic to it. But that's easy to say. I'm sure there's probably still scenarios in which you have some sort of vagary in the data and you're trying to figure out what it is. But
interesting. So
anyway, it's a good solution. Yeah,
had a good set of data there too. So if you want to, look through it and compare, I thought it was pretty interesting. So
yeah, I like the table he has with all of the examples.
Yeah.
So it's like 1800.8 is a date. Am I reading this right?
It's pretty strange. Some of them really threw me. So yeah, because the dots. In some countries they use dots instead of slashes or dashes, so that could be considered a date. Very weird. So Okay.
Right.
Well,
Fair enough.
next up we have a blog post from Ben Liddell. This one here he's talking about using CF document and CF PDF to generate PDFs with different size pages. So is this something you've ever tried, or is that too designy for you?
I usually have only had, sorry, I'm copying the link for the previous blog. I've usually only had PDFs with the same page size. I'm pretty certain you can apply a page size to a document section. And I always assumed if I wanted to have different page sizes or different orientations, I would just have a different section and apply it to that. But it looks as though Ben may have been just combining individual PDFs. You mentioned that he's using CF document and CF PDF. And so I assumed he's combining them.
And that's what I've done in the past too, is when you create the document, usually at the document level you have the margins and you have the widths and stuff. I didn't know you could do it on the sections. It's quite possible, but you can see he's using tag islands here to use tags inside of the scripts. So he's using the tag island feature, which is pretty cool to see that. But yeah, I definitely know you can do it at the page level.
Maybe I'm wrong about the sections. Maybe I'm wrong. There are margins at the section,
but not page widths and heights.
But yeah, there's not a height and width at the document section level. So I was wrong about that.
Yeah, so pretty much what you have to do is when you're done, you go and merge, and so you'll tell it to merge PDFs.
Yeah, so you would have to generate completely different PDFs and then merge them together, which is basically what it's doing.
Yep.
I like his code sample here. It's got some functional programming, some arrow functions going on.
Yep, and as you can see here, he's got a big array of some family members from Brad's side of the family.
I recognize them from the family reunion.
Yep. But yeah, so different sizes, and it just loaded up the image, created the custom size off that. So it's pretty neat. It might be nice for photographers to be able to basically whip up a PDF of all their photos, which is, they can protect it, lock it, stuff like that. And that's what they're using with InVision for some of this. So,
what's more interesting to me than the whole PDF thing, because I don't really care that much about PDFs, is just some of the stuff that Ben did in this. Scroll here. Oh no, put your screen share back up real quick. Okay. Scroll down to the bottom. Look at that with temp folder little trick that he did. So he has a chunk of code that he wants to all happen inside of a temp folder. And he wants to make sure that he cleans up the temp folder. So normally you'd put the code to create the temp folder at the top, and you'd put the code to clean up the temp folder at the bottom, and you'd have to have a try and a catch. But if you scroll down to the very bottom of that code block, you'll see
this is a closure.
Exactly, right. So he has a with temp folder function that accepts a UDF or a callback as part of it. And so he abstracts all the logic of creating the temp folder, doing a try catch in case things go horribly wrong, and the finally block that deletes it into its own little concern, this little with temp folder. And then he just passes a callback to this function and says, hey, here's a chunk of code that I want to run inside of a temp folder, and I want all the work of creation and cleanup to be a separate thing, which I think is a really clean way to program something, as opposed to kind of littering that concern of the temp folder cleanup inside of the main function.
Yeah, this is a really good way to readable, isn't it?
Yeah, because the try catch would be like way far away. There'd be dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of lines between the open and the close, and so passing a UDF around is a super convenient way to just run a chunk of logic inside of something that wraps it. I think that's a super cool example.
Yeah,
just
very cool.
Functional ColdFusion programming.
Yep. Bravo.
Anyway,
man. Good stuff. No, thanks for pointing that out. I did notice it too when I was up here looking at the top. I was scrolling down and I saw it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I got on the bottom. I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
But it's super readable, though. It's just with temp folder, do this.
And then he's even doing the get images.h.
Yeah,
so get images,
you could totally reuse it.
Yeah, so the get images is another function here, which goes through that directory list looking for stuff. So he's,
I kind of want to use that in command box in a few places now. I have a lot of places in command box where I want to do a chunk of work in a temp folder, and I got to make sure I clean this stupid thing up. And I have a lot of stupid little if statements that's like, oh, if something goes wrong, make sure you delete the temporary files. I might steal some of Ben's.
I'm stealing it, Ben. Great Ben. Yep. See, even though he's done a lot of Angular lately, we still learn a lot from his ColdFusion. So even the great Brad can learn.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. So very cool. This is another interesting one that Ben had. He had a few interesting ones this week for sure. I mean, like I mean, more than normal, which I always appreciate his blog content. But this one,
Ben, normally you're only slightly useful, but you've really been useful this week.
no, I mean, the quality stepped up, I think. Maybe just more appropriate for what I usually do. So this one here is using a tracer cookie to watch for browser downloads and prompts. And so this one was a report generation, and we've all done this, where basically you generate a report, you set the content disposition attachment, so when it's done, it'll basically download the file for you, right? And so previously he's done it where you pop open a new tab, and then it generates. It takes a while sometimes, and then it gives you the download prompt. And so he looked at different ways to do this, and so he looked at using an iframe to sort of see when it's ready, so you can see if the event, you can see when the actual file is ready and sort of give some type of notice. Then he also used nested iframes. And then the third one, he used a tracer cookie. So basically using a set interval to check to see if a cookie was created based on this old jQuery plugin by John Colviner. But basically waiting for this cookie to be created, because once it was done, it would create the cookie to say, hey, I'm done. And so in the whole process, you can see a little animated GIF down the bottom here, a lot of code. But basically when you click it will pop up a little thing saying, oh, we're generating it. And so that way it's not just sitting there waiting, is it working, is it not working?
All right, so basically he used the cookies the browser had stored for a site as a sort of shared storage space for two different browser pages to be able to communicate back and forth. So a separate browser page pops up, downloads a report that also happens to set a cookie. The first page is waiting for that cookie to pop up in the context of the cookies that the browser tracks for that site. And when it sees that, it knows the other window is done with its work.
The JavaScript can read it and then get rid of the window.
Yeah, I'd never thought about using cookies for two different windows all hitting the same site to be able to know that one had done something else. That's kind of a clever idea.
Yeah, and so it's pretty interesting, and he says it's a proof of concept that he's been working on, and he's not even sure if he likes it anymore. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this one, because, I've messed with iframes and nested iframes and trying to deal with communicating across them, and some things work in some browsers and some don't, and there's all sorts of
security
crazy
stuff makes that a total pain.
So
I'm curious if all browsers treat cookies the same. Like, do all browsers instantly make cookies available in one tab that's already loaded, even if the cookie was set in another tab on the same domain? I'm curious if all browsers do that, if this, instantly updates.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I know I've been dealing with a lot of cookies trying to get, a lot of front ends to communicate with back ends in ColdFusion sessions and try and keep things alive and pass data.
So Ben, I'm trying to see if Ben mentions Chrome, Firefox, and Safari.
Yeah.
Did he specifically? I'm curious if he tested with all of them. He didn't test with Microsoft Edge.
So anyway, but yeah, really, really good blog post. Like I said, a lot of good ideas coming from this. And that's one of those things when you're generating reports, and we've all built those, but sometimes they can take a long time, and there's no progress or anything. You're not sure, is it broken, is it working, did it not do anything, so I thought it was pretty cool. So really,
I actually have a client site I could use that on.
Yep.
Like this, thinking through that, like I have that exact scenario where I could use something like that, where a user clicks a link, I gray out the link because the stupid users whack it like 7 times, and it's like, please wait, you horrible, impatient buffoons. And then I have no way to turn the link back on once the actual download's complete. And this is actually a way that I could do that. But I don't have a workaround for that right now. The link's just dead until you refresh the page.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Ben. You're full of ideas for me today.
Yeah. He's gonna send you an invoice for consulting.
Yeah. Does Ben have a Patreon?
So next is the 5-year anniversary of Slack that we mentioned before by Mingo Hagen, and he wanted to say thanks to a few admins, and some of them are former, like Sean Caulfield, Adam Cameron, Ryan Guel, is it Dan Skaggs? Yeah, Pete Freitag, and John Wish.
Sound like you said dance gags, like when you do gags out on the dance floor.
No, that's not it. But anyway, of course, Sean was like, "Wow, it's 5 years; it's flown by." But he hasn't logged in for quite a while. Obviously, he's moved on. He's asking if it's still pretty.
No, I actually ran across Sean Caulfield in a completely unrelated programming Slack team the other day. I think it was the exorcism one, maybe.
Oh, really?
He popped up, and I'm like, Sean. Small world, I guess, and sometimes even in the greater programming world.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, 5 years, it's pretty cool, and I'm glad it's still kicking on. And I think I saw a message the other day when I was in the box channel, and it said, Brad, that's your 31,000th message or something stupid like that. If you've been talking every 3 seconds or whatever, you've been talking in the Slack channel for 38 days or something stupid. Like,
it's always wildly under on its like time of how much time you spent. It'd be like, you spent 2 days. I'm like, oh, that's a lot more than 2 days, friend.
Yeah, that's one of Brad's weaknesses. It's Slack channels everywhere. It's funny because he won't respond to my Slack messages, but if I go into the ColdFusion chat and say something, he'll respond there.
I have to work through them sometimes. You get up in the morning and all my Slack teams are just like 1,000 unreads everywhere, and you're like, oh. So you just start at the top and just start working through them all, and meanwhile 10 teams down, you're like, oh, that one was pretty important, but they all look the same. They're all just little red dots or white dots somewhere, and it's not like a priority. I almost wish I could have a priority where it's like, if a certain person tags me a certain channel, that needs to be a bigger notification than just random tags in CFML Slack of people, having conversations. But I don't know. There's no good way to make sense of it all.
Yeah. Well, Dan Card mentioned in the chat that he appreciates all of it. So, I know that there's a lot of help from, all of us Ortus team members try to help out, but Brad seems to find more time in the day than other people to do it, and he still gets his work done. I blame the coffee. That's probably the only reason he can do it. But yep. So next on our list, we have Matthew Clemente. So this one, he's speeding up his shell. Oh my, is it Z shell? How do you pronounce it? I don't know.
Z shell.
Okay. But he said it's felt a little laggy for a while. So he basically wanted to put in some work into cleaning it up, shaving some load time off and whatnot. And so basically, he had a little sit up and sort of walked his way through it. So it's a nice long post. So if you guys are using Z shell, he's got a really detailed blog post here on how to look for ways to speed it up and profiling and everything. So not something I used, but still sounded really informative. So
that's pretty cool. I don't use Z shell. I think that's only a plugin for iTerm on Mac, unless I'm incorrect. But
yeah, that's
I know that several people at Ortus use it, because the bullet train prompt and command box that I made is a total ripoff right from the Z shell plugin.
Yeah, we only rip off the good stuff.
Speaking of good stuff, we already have some feedback on Twitter. I don't know if Tony is in the podcast listening right now. He might be. But we already have some feedback regarding stuff that people want to see on CFCast. He replied to one of your tweets, Gavin. So
cool.
Tony Jinka says he wants to see some kind of advanced ColdBox series to run into the current series, but he wants to see stuff that goes deeper, especially regarding version 6 and what is bringing asynchronous functionality. So
yeah, I think we should definitely have a big series on ColdBox 6. There's a lot of great stuff in there. And Luis has done a lot of work in the nuts and bolts of it, so he's probably the one that'll have to do it. But maybe that'll be a good excuse for one of us to dive in there and get to the bottom of it and figure it out too. So,
one of the best ways to learn something is to do a webinar or a talk or a video on it, because you have to dig in enough to where you would understand it to be able to explain it to somebody else, and you learn a lot in the process. That's for sure.
Yep, for sure. Okay, so next on our list, we had a tweet from Brad Wood about heavy Java creation issue in Lucy 5.
What?
So I know we were working on a client, and you found some pretty interesting speed issues, and you managed to speed them up dramatically.
I did, yeah. This culminated in a ticket I created in the Lucy bug tracker, which I titled "Class Loading from OSGI Bundles is 27,000 times slower."
That's a good
I know,
title.
that's an actual number. Now the thing is, class loading is 27,000 times slower, but loading a class from just the kind of system class loader is something that takes nanoseconds. So being 27,000 times slower than a few nanoseconds is still pretty fast. But yeah, we've had a client that had a site on Lucy that has heavy Hibernate usage, heavy CBRM usage, and CBRM is kind of a wrapper around all these Hibernate classes, so it does a lot of create object Java, and then it creates these these Hibernate classes. And in Lucy 4, before the OSGI revolution, everything was all just dumped in one big lib folder, including Hibernate. So you had one class loader that just loaded all the classes out of a lib folder. And so loading a class is very, very fast and easy. And apparently the class loading from OSGI is slowed down a bit. And I say a bit, it takes like 10 milliseconds, to do create object Java and point to a class that's being loaded via OSGI. And I have a feeling, just my guess, that's related to Lucy. It has a big collection of OSGI bundles and has to go over all of them and say, hey, do you have this class? Hey, do you have this class? Hey, do you have this class? Until it finds a class loader that can actually provide it. So, 10 milliseconds is still like pretty fast. But if you have a request, a ColdFusion request on Lucy that, does create object Java maybe 1,000 times, that's like 10 seconds. That's 10 like solid seconds of just class loading when you multiply 10 milliseconds 1,000 times. And that's exactly what was happening on this client side of ours. Is ever since they've been on Lucy 5, their site had just been a little bit slower, but it was an API, so it wasn't really stuff people hit in the browser. People weren't quite like directly experiencing it. It was just slowing down other automated processes they had. But they were having these requests taking 10, 15 seconds. And I was able to trace using the Fusion Reactor profiler. I never would have found this without the Fusion Reactor profiler feature. A little ding for that. But I profile these slow requests, and the requests were just sitting around loading classes all the time. I'm like, what is up with this? Class load all over the place. And I started looking at the stack traces, and all the class load calls were south of a line of code in ColdFusion that was always create object Java, which of course was coming from CB over M in its reliance on creating these Java classes. And so I did some quick timing tests, and I was like, oh my gosh, it turns out like it's way slower, a few milliseconds, but significantly slower to load these Java classes via OSGI. And it was just kind of adding up in this particular combination of application. And so I put in a ticket, but the workaround was very interesting. What a lot of people don't know about create object Java, and I learned this from Sean Korfeld actually back in the day, is when you do create object Java, it doesn't actually hand you back an instance of a Java class or even just the class itself. It hands you back a Java proxy, which is a class that kind of wraps around it. And the proxy can either create instances of that Java class or can allow you to call static methods on it. And what's cool is you can do a single create object Java and get a proxy back, and you can call .init on it multiple times. You'll get back a fresh instance every time. And the overhead, the class loading overhead, was only in the initial creation of that Java proxy. You could create instances of that class with virtually no overhead. So my workaround in that application was to cache the result of the create object Java calls in the application scope, because that was a convenient place to put it. So I would only call that once and cache that, and then we would just reuse that Java proxy object and call .init to get an actual instance out of it whenever we needed it. The performance of that particular application increased by tenfold. Like literally, the average request time went from 5 seconds down to 500 milliseconds.
So what about
all from just the overhead?
So I guess
the class loading itself is 27,000 times slower, but I mean you're still only 10 milliseconds per one. So the way it manifests itself in the actual application performance is obviously only a portion of what's happening. So I mean this affected this particular application due to the fact the application heavily relied on creating Java classes. If you create a couple of Java classes in your code here and there with create object, you probably wouldn't even notice it. Not a big deal, which is why I think a lot of people have never noticed it. But this particular application, the libraries it used, it had over 200 ORM calls per hit on some pages, really complex stuff, pulling data from all over the place. And so the profile of how the application worked, it was just getting, kicked in the butt every time it would try to run with all this class loading stuff. So it was a very interesting find.
Yeah. So saved oodles of seconds. So pretty
oodles of for this particular app, it did save oodles of seconds. I told the client I was in a billing based on how much time I saved with their app processing, so it would be 10 times the normal rate. They laughed. I don't think they took it seriously. But yeah, I mean, my two big takeaways are Fusion Reactor Profiler, which is part of Fusion Reactor Ultimate. Never would have found this without that, first of all. Second of all, if you think, oh, I wonder if this is affecting me, it may not, it may be. Open up Fusion Reactor, profile your slow request, and you'll know if it's affecting you or not, because it
Find
could be
out.
completely unrelated. Yeah, I mean, don't go through and change the code in your app because you think this might be affecting you. You actually have to use a tool like Fusion Reactor and find out the root cause before you start randomly changing stuff. That's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, for sure.
Randomly changing things without actually knowing what the problem is
Yeah,
something I dislike.
get some data, for sure.
Yep, get the data.
Cool. Well, next we have a blog post from Julian Hallowell. This is as simple as possible, as complex as necessary. So, loading Java libraries dynamically in Lucy without Java Loader. So this one here talks about some different options, but obviously ColdFusion, we love the ability to use Java underneath. And he says he's not a Java developer, and he basically wants to keep it simple. And so, something simple like DNS lookup, you'd have to basically use something from Java to do so. The best thing about it is, you can use it different ways. And so here he sort of goes over the different ways of doing it, using the libpath, or Java loader, or using this.java settings, and then sort of looking through. But he talks about class clashing as well, so it was pretty good. Like OSGI bundles. Oh man, so he really went into some detail on all the different pieces. And I use a little bit of Java, but to be honest, most of the modules I use, they already have it all taken care of. That's one thing about ForgeBox. Those modules have all the information you need. It has the Java files, and they're connected up. And so most of the time, you don't have to connect them yourself. But if you want to learn more about how it all works, it goes through pretty good detail.
And it is important that this is Lucy specific in this blog post. Unfortunately, well, it's not unfortunate for Lucy people. Unfortunately for Adobe ColdFusion users, you're missing out on a lot of functionality Lucy provides. One of the the biggest ones is just being able to provide jar files directly to create an object and saying, hey, create a Java class, and here's the jar file I want you to pull it from. And of course, obviously in the current stable releases of ColdFusion, there's no concept of OSGI loading classes and bundles. So Lucy has a lot of options, which unfortunately just don't exist in ColdFusion. But I'm always hopeful that we'll get some of those in upcoming versions of ColdFusion.
Yep, so if you guys are listening from Adobe, check this blog post out. Get some ideas on what to add to the system. So, very cool. Okay, well, it was a pretty short week for blog posts and stuff this week. So that's our blog posts. We do have a little information on the job search. So right now there's no new postings from this last week, but there's still 45 positions posted on the
Zero new jobs. There's someone on the ColdFusion Facebook group this morning that was posting some job related stuff. It appeared to be maybe a government thing. I'm not sure. It was they called it a contest, but it's not a contest. It's where you have to put forth bids. This is how we would approach the project, and they'll choose the best one. But yeah, that was on one of the popular Facebook ColdFusion groups, if you're not a part of those.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw that one or not, or I would have added it here. But there are 45 jobs available on the Get CFML Jobs website. I think there was 5 from last week, so not this week just gone, but the week before. And some of those are still open. So definitely check that out, getcfmljobs.com. And then, as you mentioned, the LinkedIn group has over 8,000 members, and there's several ColdFusion groups on Facebook, and quite a lot of times people are looking for contractors or, looking for people. So those are other ways to get that information.
Ooh, I just got a pull request for Command Box.
Hey,
Lucky day.
Pay attention. ForgeBox, module of the week.
People are sending me pull requests, Gavin. Matt Clemente.
So our ForgeBox module of the week this week is actually a new one by Gary Stanton. So this one is UTrust. And so
I retweeted that earlier this week. I just saw it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So UTrust CFML provides a wrapper for the UTrust crypto payments API. And so you can get your key from utrust.com, and it's got some documentation there. But basically this gets you up and running with your own crypto payment option pretty easily. And so I'm just going to bring up the site and show you. I never even heard of it, to be honest. So I know that there's a lot more coming out all the time with payment options and everything else. And I'm not saying you guys should go use it, because I have no idea who they are or what they're doing. But just looking here, I mean, it looks nice and clean. Some good options. They've got a lot of different digital currencies, but apparently it's good for business and for personal. So it's definitely an interesting option. So
I'm kind of curious how it works. Like, I mean, if you accept Bitcoin in your site, does Utrust basically just like deposit regular US dollars or whatever the heck, dollars into your account out of it? Or do they have like a cryptocurrency credit that you can cash out? I'm curious how that works.
yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's got a whole bunch of digitals. Yeah, there's a
So
lot
how
of.
long before CFCasts allow cryptocurrency?
Well,
Put
that's actually
those
a good
Bitcoins
question.
to good use, kids.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean any major digital currencies can be used. Um,
I'll be honest, I don't follow them close enough to even know more than two or three of them, but
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
So, but yep. So that one should get you up and running pretty quickly. And as I mentioned, it is up on ForgeBox. It's under Utrust CFML.
Mm-hmm.
So you can
No,
find out
you
more.
trust.
So there's an examples folder there for you already. So you got examples of an order
Ooh.
and a response. And there's a couple of models here. So the stores model is a singleton used to create your order, and the webhook model is a transient used to process the payload returned by the Utrust order callback. And it can be used standalone or as a ColdBox module.
I
So,
like that.
yep,
Get the
nice.
ColdBox goodness and also the standalone functionality.
Yep. So here you got your, your totals. You got your line items, just an array of items. Pretty straightforward. So yeah, not too complicated. Looks like nice clean code. So looks like a good module. So if you're looking to maybe dive into some cryptocurrencies and looking taking some payments, maybe this is one you can look at. And then Gary Stanton, as I said, is the author of that wrapper there. So pretty cool. Okay, next up we have VS Code hints, tips, and tricks of the week. And this one got a lot of attention this last week. Not from you, Brad, because I know you don't care. But
I saw you guys talking about it,
you did?
all
Okay.
jumping up and down in the Slack team, talking about how it changed your life.
So Tailwind is a popular new CSS framework. Well, I guess it's not that new, but Adam Wavin is the creative of this, and they've got a lot of great products. But the Brad Cornice, I think, is one of their actual first development hires.
No
And so-
relation.
yeah. But this is basically an intelligent Tailwind CSS tool for VS Code. And so everyone's pretty excited in the Tailwind world because now we have Tailwind IntelliSense. So when you start typing out your classes, you'll actually see visually the colors for the different options for this type of stuff.
Oh, nice.
That has autocomplete, syntax highlighting, linting all built in, and it's pretty amazing from what it sounds like. You just set up your make sure you have Tailwind installed and you have your Tailwind configuration file, and hopefully that even works for prefixes too, because I know some of our projects we use prefixes so we can use Tailwind on top of an existing CSS framework. But yeah, nice autocomplete here is showing an example of being able to choose red background. For example, with the colors included, linting in here as well to highlight possible errors. It says utilities not a valid group. Did you mean utilities? And stuff like that. So some pretty cool linting, and the hover preview for something is pretty neat too. So you can actually find out more about it just by hovering over it. CSS syntax highlighting as well, and there's some settings as well. But it's pretty cool. Eric is over the moon. Luis loves it already. We're becoming big Tailwind fans over here at Ortus, and some of our clients are too. So pretty cool little plugin there. It's already got 100,000 installs almost in less than a week, so not bad. But definitely a pretty cool plugin there, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more from the Tailwind team. So. Now, if you haven't seen it already, Tailwind UI is a great product out there as well. And if you're not sure if you like Tailwind or not, definitely check this out. Basically, beautiful UI components crafted by the creators of Tailwind CSS. So here,
BEA beautiful.
yep, a lot of great things. And what they basically did is create components. And the nice thing about it is that they give you the HTML, because all of this is just HTML with classes, and so they've got a lot of good components here, and you can just see the code, And it may take a little while to get used to this utility type setup, but once you get the hang of it, it's great. And they have some great videos on the Tailwind website as well. But yeah, a lot of awesome components. You don't have to worry about things, and maybe this will be good for you, Brad. If you want to do an FAQ page, you can just use one of theirs. If you need to do a newsletter section, you could use that. They have all these different components for different things, and you basically plug in the HTML and away you go. So Tailwind's pretty awesome, and they're doing a lot of work with that. And they've created books. They got the UI components here. So Tailwind.
How does Tailwind make money? Who owns them?
Adam Webin is the creator of Tailwind, and he basically just did it to start with, basically just because he wanted something to do what he wanted. But he has his own podcast as well. So he has a podcast, which he is obviously making money. But to be honest, he doesn't do sponsorship anymore. He's just doing Tailwind UI. But they also wrote a book. Him and Steve Schurger wrote a book about design, and they sold that. And I know that they made over $1 million from selling the book. And
wow!
Very shortly, and they in Tailwind UI, they made.
Hey Gavin, you want to write a book?
Well, they have pretty huge audiences. They have Refactoring UI, which is a video series which shows them basically taking a UI and transforming it. Adam Webham and Steve Schurger got a lot of great content, and they built up huge audiences. But yeah, they basically, the releases are $1 million releases, and so now they have the luxury of doing what they want and working on.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Imagine what you would do. I mean, this goes to our listeners. Like, if you made $1 million writing a book, like, what kind of code projects would you just work on? Like, you don't have to worry about making money, or like, oh, I've always wanted to try to build, X, Y, Z. I mean, I can think of stuff I'd play with if I didn't have to worry about making money with it. CFNAP, is that a library that helps you sleep, Dan? Dan Card said CFNAP in the chat here, so he's going to take a CFNAP.
Yeah. Just on the Tailwind thing a little more. So Refactoring UI, so that's a design for developers book, and so it's put together from the developer's point of view, but made pretty by Steve Schurger. He helped design Tailwind's default design system. So that's the book that they created.
That's the $1 million book?
Yep. But
we need $1 million book, Gavin.
It would be nice, but again, on the Tailwind site, the resources, designing with Tailwind. So this is sort of a video screencast series, which is free. Highly recommend going through all this. It has, setting it up and, building it, talking about designing different things, and you build it from scratch. You basically build this little site from scratch for all the components, and it sort of talks about why he built it this certain way, and this sort of the thought process and everything. And working with Vue now as well, Vue.js, it just really helps to build on top of it. So yeah, can't say enough good things about it. So cool.
I think we need a CFCast series on Tailwind.
Well, you just point them there, but but that's definitely a good idea.
Hey, if you want to make $1 million, you got to come up with some ideas that are going to sell.
Yeah, but I mean,
what if we outbook their book? You write a book on Tailwind that's better than the Tailwind book. Like, what's up? $2 million book. Boom.
That would be nice.
What would you do without my ideas, man?
Yep, maybe we'll write a book about how to come up with ideas about writing books. Okay, well, last on our list this week is our Patreon supporters. As we mentioned earlier, we're about almost 50% supported just from Patreon alone. So we'd like to thank everybody who's financially supporting us through Patreon. And you can find out more about our Patreon services on patreon.com/AutoSolutions. For those watching, I'll share the Patreon site here. As you can see, there's different options, starting for as little as $10 a month for a box supporter. And then we have a lot of different levels. And so we have almost 30 Patreons. And like I said, we're at 48% of our goals. That would basically fully support our podcast here. So we're hoping to get that up to 100%. And then that allows us to spend more of our time and money helping the other open source products that we've built, like CommandBox, ForgeBox, ColdBox, ContentBox, TestBox, and all the other box products.
Box.
Yep. So
NatBox for Dan Card.
NatBox. Sleep is a big topic for having a 3-year-old, Dan. You're right. Yeah, I kind of wish my kids take more sleep when they're older than 3. But anyways, so let's thank all of our Patreon supporters again. Thanks everyone for making a financial donation to us, and we want to thank Benedell, Brett Deline, Carl Van Staten, Charlie Arehart, Dali, Dan Carr, Daniel Garcia, David Ballinger, Didia Lesnicki, Don Bellamy, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Jan Yannick, Jeremy Adams, Jonas Erickson, Jordan Clark, Joseph Lamry, Kai Koenig, Laxma Todohadi, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Ryan Hughes, Scott Steinbeck, Sean Oden, Stephen Klotz, Synaptrix, and Yogesh Mithur. So your all
Awesome.
should be listed up on the ortusolutions.com/about-us/sponsors page. And if you guys are looking to just add yourself to that list, check out the patreon.com/ortusolutions page. But we're thankful for everyone who supports us in financial and non-financial ways. So thank you to everyone else who makes pull requests like Matthew Clemente just did for Brad. Documentation updates, issuing and filing bugs. It all helps, but we want to say a special thank you to those Patreon supporters. It's pledging their hard-earned money every month to help us, and we really appreciate that. So Thank you guys so much. So, can you believe it, 2020? We're almost halfway done with this crazy year.
Only halfway?
Yeah, what's
Oh
left?
man, it's like when you're in like a class or a wedding or something that's just dragging on, and you're like, oh, hopefully it's done. And you look at your watch, you're like, oh my gosh, we're only halfway through.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Funnily enough, me and my wife were talking about how 2020 is going to be like a term you use to talk about a crazy person or a nuts thing. I'm like, oh man, that girl is so 2020, man. She's gone crazy.
We need to make that happen. Yeah, turn it into an adjective, basically.
It will be, I'm sure. It needs to be.
Gavin,
crazy.
quit being so 2020.
Yeah, so much for hindsight being 2020.
Yeah,
hindsight is
nobody wants to be 2020 now.
Yeah.
I think optometrists are going to rename 2020 to be a different number now. It's been sullied.
Yep, exactly. But anyway, so enjoy the last day of June, and then we'll catch you all next week.
All right.
Have a good one, everybody.
Laters.
Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.